Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? Drowning in the milk of the moon. I try to roll off the checkered blanket as Daddy desperately tries to wipe the sticky drips of mint chocolate from my ice cream-coated face before it reaches the new white blouse left exposed to stains. I promised your mom I wouldn't stain your shirt before dinner, he said, leaning down to whisper the words in my ears. I giggle, squirming in his arms. My eyes drift past the nearly empty playground to a pair of eyes in the bushes. The setting sun makes them glow. Daddy, look! The bush has eyes! He glances at where I'm pointing, and the eyes disappear. I gape after them. Nothing there, he says distractedly, going after my face with the wipes again. Now stop squirming, little worm. I giggle again, finally staying still for him to wipe half the mess off my face. The playgrounds are empty now. Movement catches my eye. Feet on the cold, crunchy grass. They're held by tearing sandals. Daddy, look, I say, pointing at the owner of the feet. A girl stumbles towards us. He turns his head, startling when he sees the girl. Immediately, he turns to me. Go play on the playground, Lily. And don't get your shirt dirty, he says strictly. All right, Daddy, I say, planting my bare feet on the ground. I hurl myself towards the empty slides. When I manage to climb the slide, I look back out at Daddy. I can just make out his words to the girl. He's asking her how old she is. She says she's 17, gasping hysterically and glancing behind her frantically. What's wrong with her? I look down the slide, my eyes widening. The slide stretches out to the sharp mulch. Daddy, I can't get down. A small whimper escapes me as I look up. The girl is holding a knife. I'm not allowed to use those. Daddy raised his hands in the air. Speaking softer, she looks up at my cry. Daddy tries to move in front of her. Oh no, she says with a laugh. Is that your daughter? Don't you dare touch her, he snarls. She laughs, grabbing Daddy and dragging him towards the slide. They're standing at the bottom when I speak. Who are you? I ask. She smiles pure delight on every inch of her face. Do you know what a serial killer is? She asks. I shake my head no. Well, I go around, and when I see someone with pretty eyes, she brings the knife to Daddy's throat. I frown again. Knives are dangerous. She should be more careful. I take them out of people. That way I can look at them forever. Why do you have a knife? Knives are dangerous, I say. Can you help me down? I'm stuck up here, I say. No, Daddy bursts out. Lily, go the other way. Run. No, the girl says. You won't. Do you know what color your eyes are? She asks. I look at Daddy. He looks scared. They're quarter-colored, I say. reluctantly looking back at the girl. The girl laughs pure delight in every bit of the sound. You and your daddy's eyes are wonderful. She looks at Daddy, throwing him a smile. Lily, that's your name, right? Yes, I say. She smiles, laughing again. They're gray, like the milk of the moon, an ink-black iris drowning in the milk of the moon. She gives a soft groan of pleasure. Oh, that just sounds so beautiful, doesn't it, Lily? My eyebrows creased in confusion. The moon doesn't have milk. She sighs. Well, I think it's time to cut this meeting short. Where are you going? She smiles. Well, after I take your daddy's eyes, I'll go find a nice, pretty pair of amber ones. How will you take Daddy's eyes? I'll cut them out, she says. Just like this. She presses the tip of the knife to the skin just below his fuzzy eyebrows. He tells me to cover my eyes just before he starts screaming. 16 years, 43 days, 19 hours, and 37 minutes later. Hey Lily, how are you doing? I startle, looking up to see Mary on the other side of the receptionist's desk. Hey Mary, I'm all right. Why? She slides a newspaper article onto my desk, dragging her eyes from mine. IRISSTRIKESAGAIN. The famous Boston serial killer, nicknamed Iris for her obsession with her victim's eyes, strikes again. This time taking the life of a 43-year-old businessman, Trevor Clint, was found with his eyes carved out of his face and left dead. This victim sported violet eyes, a very rare eye color brought on by albinism. He was a family man, survived by his 2 daughters and wife. The police force wants to reassure the public they are doing everything they can to stop Iris. Anyone with any information on Iris is asked to come forward to police or call the following number. I slide the newspaper away before I can read anymore. Bullshit. They haven't done crap to find her. She's been roaming around, killing man after man. Half the world is too stuck up to believe that it's a her. The other half is so busy being offended by the misogynistic asses who refuse to accept it. Could be a woman they forget that the real problem is the serial killer. The police force is too worried about drunk teenagers and day-late taxes that nobody bothers to look for her until they don't have the eyes to look. I'm taking the day off, I say sharply. Mary opens her mouth for a moment, then shuts it. I clench my teeth, grabbing the newspaper, and quickly slip it into my bag. I navigate the room full of sympathetic eyes. I hate eyes. Hate them more than anything else on the human body. Hate the way they move. Hate the way they follow every movement. More than anything, I hate the way they look when they're carved out of someone's head. I rap on the door to my boss's office. His muffled voice gives me permission to enter. I walk into his office, head downcast. He looks up from a call, sympathy immediately crossing his face. I hate sympathy as well. Hate it more than the whispers, the news articles, the interviews. Sympathy and eyes, my 2 worst enemies. I bite back a bitter, deranged laugh at that. I grit my teeth, putting on my best, the daughter of that dead guy voice. One I quickly realized got me farther than a bristly, angry snap. I'd like the rest of the day off. I lower my voice to a whisper for extra effect. Of course, Lily, he says quickly. We're all here if you need us. I don't put the effort into faking a smile. Just nod softly, mutter a thank you, and leave the office. In the lobby, I glance in a mirror, stare at my eyes, the same eyes that got carved out of my father's head. an ink-black iris drowning in the milk of the moon. I turn away before I break something. I walk out of the office and glance at the clock. I have 2 hours to get there, and 2.5 hours before dark. 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 49 seconds later. A figure clad in black slips next to me. I've been sitting on this bench for an hour. The water soaked through my jeans to my flesh. Shivers run through my body. "Glad to see you again, Lily," she says. There's something about her voice, always moments away from bursting into a cruel, mocking laugh. It feels like a knife dragged across teeth. I shudder, glad the shivering covers it. I grip the knife in my pocket, looking at the last children leaving the playground. The same one I sat at 10 years ago. Mint chips still sticky on my lips as this woman murdered my father. I've seen her 4 times since then. None of them had been by my own will. This time's different. I watch the children, trotting after their mother, giggling and tripping over each other with the promise of sweets and safety back in their home. "Not going to talk to me?" she asks, leaning back boredly. I ignore her, watching until the children slip into their car before I speak. "What do you want?" Iris smiles. Ah, there it is. That voice, almost as nice as your eyes. I tense, clenching my teeth until they hurt. "What?" I hiss. "Do you want?" "Oh, come on, darling," she says with a laugh. "We both know these meetings have been about you since I killed your daddy. What was his name?" She searches the air. "Ah, Carl?" My hand slips on the blade in my pocket. It cuts my hand open as I lurch, throwing myself off the bench. My voice turned to a furious, animal-like snarl. "You keep his name out of your damned mouth." I snarl. My hand comes out of my pocket, dripping blood. She looks at it, then laughs. Standing up, she walks up to me, leaning in so I can feel her breath on my nose. I can smell it. I'd always imagined her breath smelling like rotting flesh, like death, like power. Instead, it smells like mint, almost like she's just eaten a piece of gum. "Ah, what are you going to do? Kill me?" She coos, taking my bleeding hand in hers. She inspects it in the quick fading light. Sad Lily. Pathetic, really, but I'm not one to toy with my meal. That includes name-calling. I snap. My unoccupied fist curls in on itself and slams into her head. She reels from the hit, staying on her feet and launching back to retaliate. I bring the knife out of my pocket and start swinging at her. I've gotten her in the head, the arm, the leg. Thump, thump, thump. Every single kick I land brings complete, utter euphoria. It's a high I've never experienced. She stumbles, hitting the ground. I drop to my knees and punch her in the jaw. Over and over. She still struggles as I take the duct tape I bought out of my bag and press the adhesive over her mouth, tying her hands behind her and wrapping her ankles to stop her kicking. Then I yank her hood down, looking into her eyes. They're not afraid, just angry. I stiffen. This was the moment I dreamed of. I wanted to see the fear in her eyes. They're perfectly, utterly plain. Not rare, not beautiful, just there. Muddy, plain eyes. Unbridled, burning rage makes it hard to focus. I feel dizzy. Dizzy is such a good way. All the pain gone, my only focus on how to hurt this monster. "How's it feel?" I whisper, a laugh escaping my throat as I lean down to speak in her ear. "Let me tell you, Iris, you are not getting away today. You are dying, whether I drown you in the milk of your damn moon." I take a moment to take out a lighter, watching its glint in the slow glint against the moonlight. Or I might burn you. I haven't decided how yet, but it will happen. She doesn't waver, her eyes never moving. The nerve she has does something to me, clouds my judgment. Then, peace. I know exactly what to do. I take the knife, and watching her face, I do the one thing I know will work. I press it into the flesh under her eyebrows, just like she did to my father 16 years ago, and I listen to her scream, "Night shift." It all started one wintry night. I was waiting to cross a busy intersection on Oxford Street in London's West End. My workday had just ended, and it felt good to be out of that stuffy office. I had been feeling warm all day and hoped I wasn't coming down with a cold or flu that regularly permeated the office environment at this time of year. Joining the throngs of people heading for the underground trains on their way home, I breathed in the crisp air that usually had a ruffled chill to every month of January, and was looking forward to getting home, switching on the telly, and putting my feet up for the evening. Whether it was the cold night air invigorating my lungs, or just getting away from my desk, I felt a heightened sensation, bordering on elation. Even my sense of hearing had become acute to conversations in the crowd around me. More interestingly, my stomach began to rumble like it hadn't eaten for days. But I distinctly remember eating a large portion of steak tartare for lunch, watching the animated green walking figure appear at the traffic light opposite. I stepped onto the road, but something immediately caught my attention. The people crowding around me were glowing. That is, their necks were glowing crimson. Even the ones wearing scarves appeared to be radiantly red, like they had twinkling Christmas lights wrapped around their heads. A sudden downpour of heavy, wet rain brought me back to my senses, which was fortunate for me, as I was about to kiss a strange woman's neck. This surrealistic impulse that I almost acted out panicked me. Never had I been attracted to a woman so much that I felt like blatantly accosting her on a street. I was happily married, for goodness sake, and not interested in other women. The more I searched for a reasonable explanation, the more I broke out in a cold sweat. It had alarmed me to a level of fright and flight, so I rushed headlong down the escalator stairs at Bond Street Station and jumped onto the Jubilee line to take me home. However, it was rush hour, and I found myself stuffed into a train carriage like sardines in a tin. That's when further urges tormented me. I could smell a sweet, metallic pungency all around me, and it was intoxicating, alluring, and simply irresistible. I realized I needed to control myself, because part of me argued it was immoral to feel the strange growing urges building up inside me. So I closed my eyes and chanted an unrecognizable verse in my head in an attempt to distract me from my pulsating desires. It didn't help. because the words I recited only increased a compelling hunger that needed immediate feeding. Feel the hunger deep inside, a tormenting thirst to be denied. When the scent of blood is in the air, eat here, drink there, gorge everywhere, unable to control my urges. I found myself exiting the train 2 stops early at Swiss Cottage. The rain had stopped and left a misty haze dampening the ground. Car headlights cut through the fog, creating halo effects around pedestrians crossing the road, making them look like they were glowing from head to foot. It was best that I could not see clearly. It would speed my passage home without any temptations, taking a shortcut down an old alleyway that connected to a quicker way home. I hoped to shave several minutes off my hike. The alleyway was poorly lit, with lamp posts approximately 50 meters apart, most of them inoperative from damage done to them. As I picked up my pace, I heard a sound like someone slipping on a wet surface, then a cracking sound like a hard part of them had hit the cement pathway. A yell, followed by an expletive, told me that the person I was descending on had fallen and hurt themselves. "Are you okay, miss?" I genuinely asked on my approach. "I've cut my chin," the young woman stated. "Do you have any Kleenex tissues or paper towels?" It was then that the enticing aroma of freshly released blood wafted under my nose. Gently cupping her chin, I leaned in and, "What are you doing?" the policeman demanded to know as he shined his bright flashlight on me. I was frozen in place, my eyes the only moving part darting towards the constable, then darting back at the young woman whose chin I was tightly attached to with my mouth. Logic escaped me, but flippancy did not. Quickly recalling something my mother used to say at the dinner table, I blurted it out with clenched teeth. "I would like to explain, Constable, but my mother always told me to never talk with my mouth full." Either the constable had no sense of humor, or he was tired of dealing with flippant replies to his standard police inquiries. He pulled out his truncheon and began to attack me about my head with his nightstick. One swift rip of his neck with pointy, sharp claws I didn't know existed until that moment caused him to slump to the wet ground in dead weight. Witnessing this unexpected act, the young woman screamed a blood-curdling shriek that sounded like music to my highly acute hearing. Attempting to escape, I counted to 3. Then an impressive light of foot sprint had me overtake her in seconds, where I dispatched her to the same place as that bullying policeman. Needless to say, I was horrified at my involuntary actions and needed to get home as quick as I could. I managed to cover the last mile in 2 minutes, flat. Another surprise that shocked me, because until that moment, any form of exercise I participated in, running was never my best activity. "Hello, darling," my Eloise greeted me. as I unlocked the door to the safety of our welcoming abode. "How was your day?" Without a word, I unintelligibly grunted and shook my shoulders before hurrying up the stairs to the bathroom. "You okay?" Eloise called up the stairs. I was too shaken to answer. How could I explain a happening so bizarre and an anomaly so incomprehensible? It was too surreal for words, but remarkably, it had left me tingling with an unexpected surge of excitement. "Don't forget the Fortescues are coming for dinner, darling. They insisted on a weekday. Some money-making opportunity they want to present to us." Freddie Fortescue was always scheming to make an extra buck here and there, since his wealthy, stuck-up parents had practically disowned him for spending all his trust fund on get-rich-quick schemes. He had mentioned this one in passing the last time we got together, but I told him that pyramid schemes only made money for those at the top. It was obvious that saying no to Freddie was like saying no to happiness. So he probably had his wife, Bunty, put pressure on Eloise to allow him to pitch the idea over a Wednesday night dinner tete-a-tete. The very night I seemed to be at a disadvantage in mental faculties. Damp from the evening's events, I sat on the edge of the bathtub and grabbed a towel from the rail, then proceeded to dry my face and hair of the excess blood splashed on me during my outrage. My body trembled at the memory of what I had just done, and a soft, painful cry escaped my lungs. Moments later, the bathroom door swung open, and Eloise rushed in, a look of worried concern on her face. "What's wrong, darling? Are you okay?" "I don't know where to start," I mumbled. "It's okay," Eloise softly reassured me. "Calm yourself." Tears filled my dry eyes. Something horrific had happened to me. I felt like my insides were remapping my DNA. I feel like my body is changing, Elle. Like I'm a teenager again, going through puberty. It's such a strange feeling, bordering on an energizing sensation of euphoria. I'm sweating, but I don't feel hot. Gently caressing my chin until our eyes locked in comforting gazes, Elle pressed the back of her other hand against my forehead. "You do feel rather on the cold side, darling. I have done something horrible, Elle. Come on," Eloise requested. "A nice glass of red downstairs will set you to rights. You can tell me all about it after you change clothes." Ushering me from behind, Eloise nudged me from the bathroom. I felt both confused and elated at the same time. But how would I be able to explain it to Elle? Snapping me out of my inward thoughts, Elle held up the cravat she wanted me to wear. Then produced the most exquisite red velvet jacket while helping me on with it. It was a tad kitsch, but she has always loved seeing me dressed up in 1970s Hugh Hefner-styled clothing. She said seeing me in a velour way caused her to purr like a kitten, and that it always added a little excitement to the evening. Besides, the Fortescue's sense of fashion always seemed to tease at the edge of tackiness. It would be rude not to indulge our guests on this dark, wet, and atmospheric night. No sooner had Elle dressed me, Freddie and Bunty were ringing our doorbell. As I opened the door to let them in, I decided to put on a brave face and try to act normal. This was helped by Freddie and Bunty gliding into the hallway, dressed in a similar 70s revival fashion. Good company for my velvet jacket. Freddie's wide lapel suit with platform shoes made him look taller than his small stature. But Bunty looked deliciously attractive in a rainbow-striped halter top and brown flared pants. Luckily for her, the faux fox fur coat she wore as she entered our home had kept her cozy and warm in the outside fog of the evening. It was a much-needed distraction from my earlier experience, so I told myself to just get through dinner, then confess all to my loving Eloise. Throughout the evening, conversation from our guests had been jovial, but I remained slightly reserved, still trying to come to grips with my sudden change of character. It wasn't too noticeable, as Freddie took center stage and entertained us with quips and jokes of an era gone by. You know, the borderline racist and sexist one-liners that matched his dress code. Bunty shyly giggled at Freddie's off-color humor, but managed to correct him when he went too far. Eloise had seated me next to Bunty, and opposite us, she sat next to Freddie. Soup was the starter. However, my appetite had escaped me, so I didn't partake in eating any of it. Trying to suppress flashbacks of the evening's earlier slaughter, coupled with my adrenaline level still high, acted as a natural hunger suppressant. Eloise noticed my introverted behavior and flashed a concerned look at me across the dining table, but I smiled and nodded that I was okay. During the main meal, Eloise served up some medium rare fried steaks with pommes frites that, although smelled enticing, I just played with mine until I became bored. So, topping up everyone's wine glass, I settled into listening to Freddie open his sales pitch on why we should attend his pyramid parties. He explained how getting in early guaranteed us a big payday, and that we could repeat the process multiple times. Illegal as his idea was, it was tempting nonetheless. I was on the verge of agreeing when all my senses suddenly heightened beyond containment. It was as if I could hear Bunty's pulse beating like a drum struck methodically in cadent rhythm. Chillingly, it sent me into a form of stalking mode, instantly attracting my devoted attention, beguiling me with its seducing sound. I soon realized it was the incantation of Bunty's blood being pumped through her soft veins. Studying her pulsating neck closely, I was immediately overcome with the oddest desire to kiss her. So I leaned in toward her and, "Darling," Eloise abruptly demanded my attention. "Where are your manners? We should always feed the guests first." I turned my head sideways to respond to Elle, and was bemused at the expression on Freddy's face. A look of sheer shock and horror stretched across his entire expression. As I removed my face from snuggling into Bunty's neck, she unexpectedly fell face down into her caramel flan that Eloise had served for dessert, staining it blood red with every pumping beat of her open jugular vein. I was flabbergasted at the sight before me. But before I could cry in shock, and more importantly, before Freddy could run screaming from the house, Eloise quickly bit down onto his large-collared, silk-shirted neck, draining him of a large amount of life-giving blood. Not to be upstaged, he too imitated Bunty's reaction and slumped with his nose buried in his dessert. Before you freak out, Eloise halted my panic. We need to talk. My gut reaction was to scream. However, the satisfying sensation that coursed through every fiber of my body sat me relaxed back into the comfort of my chair. Everything became clearer. This was to be the new normal, my newly formed ideology argued. What surprised me the most was my Eloise. It was obvious that she was like me, but had been so for a tad bit longer than I. It was also apparent that she was the one responsible for my predicament. When did you? I sincerely inquired. Sunday night, darling, she replied, cutting me off in mid-question. Why? I'm so sorry, my love. I'm selfish, and I couldn't bear the thought of living through eternity without you. Her candor was admirable, and her expression of love for me was so sweet that I immediately forgave her. She did it out of love, I reasoned, with the lucidity of a madman. However, there was still one question remaining to be answered. Elle, who turned you? Nigel, at the company Christmas party, the one where partners weren't invited? Obviously, for a reason, darling. The world needs more vampires, apparently. It's all the rage. Somehow, I had missed that memo at my own place of business. Elle's answer certainly explained the increasing numbers of sicky days my colleagues took before never returning to work. It also explained my wife's sudden rush to buy thick black velvet curtains that she kept drawn during daylight hours. I simply thought blocking out the intermittent English sunshine helped ease her migraines. What created a conundrum is that she chose to convert me without any prior discussion. But I suppose that would have been a difficult topic to broach. Darling, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that I will live forever. The bad news is you won't. So I need to bite your neck and drain your blood. I may have run for the hills if she had explained it in that manner. However, the way I felt after ripping through bountiful Bunty's porcelain flesh was too intoxicating to argue with any rational thought. I was now a night crawler, a citizen of the undead. My world had changed. It was up to me to live with it and learn to sleep by day, because from here on out, I was going to have to work the night shift, still trying to process events. I didn't hear the front door being broken in, the heavy sets of footsteps piling into the hallway, and the police helicopter hovering above our roof, shining its blinding searchlight beam through the open curtains. I must have been recognized on my mad dash home at the speed of a fast-moving city car, angry shouts ordering the two of us to lay on the floor face down, accompanied guns pointing directly at us. Eloise remained calm, but I was still processing the intrusion and trying like an idiot to protest at the 8 heavily armed members of the CVS, the counter-vampire squad. "Gentlemen," I began, "couldn't this wait until after dinner? We still haven't opened the port." An over-aggressive policeman, frustrated by my words, hit me in the head with the butt of his assault rifle, but it had no sensory impact on me. He might as well have just blown air in my face. He obviously had not seen what I had done to the last policeman that attacked me. "Darling," Eloise softly called, "it's time." "Time for what, Elle?" "Time for us to find somewhere else to live." In a speedy blur, resembling life at fast-forward viewing, Eloise swiftly overpowered every member of the vampire squad, beheading each one of them before they could react. Once again, I was shocked at the carnage, but in parallel, oh so proud and in awe of my wonderful Elle. In time, I would most likely possess those unworldly skills. But for now, I remained in a state of marvel at her ability to nullify an overwhelming force that had threatened to overpower us. "Bravo, Elle," I congratulated her, my compassion for the dead non-existent and my grasp of reality rapidly slipping from any semblance of sanity. Quickly grabbing our coats, Elle pulled me by the hand and led me down the hallway and through our broken front door, turning to take a final look at the home we had to immediately vacate. The whir of the hovering helicopter above our house reminded us that time was of the essence. Putting a loving arm around my beloved Elle, I flipped a defiant, juvenile-inspired middle finger up at the pilot, then guided Elle out into the foggy night. "What now, Jeremy?" Elle sentimentally asked as we fled at top speed to avoid the chopper's searchlight. "Let's eat first," I replied. "I'm starving." Straitjacket. Chrissy. Yates pocketed the last of her equipment and squinted her eyes, the way a predator is in on its prey. "Oh, come on," she thought, her nervous gaze darting between her watch and the sanatorium door. Impatient, she stood herself at the entrance, which was one of corrugated iron. It was an almost baleful presence, and one that only chose to admit the most intrepid of investigators. Beware ye who enter. Paranormal investigation was no hobby of Chrissy's, It wasn't something she did for one Friday evening's amusement. It was her life, much to the annoyance of her fiancé, Todd. "Why can't you do something normal?" he pleaded. "Like book club?" Chrissy scoffed at that, quietly terrified at how suburban Todd was becoming. She found it baffling how her and Todd, once throwing darts at a world map to see where they would travel, could now only sight a scoot around in the Kroger parking lot as the most adventurous thing they had done together. They were now completely different on a cellular level. Fundamentally, Chrissy was a rebel. She was a free spirit, a girl with twigs and berries in her hair, a girl who cried whenever you killed a ladybug by accident. But here, she had lost her iridescent shell and become a scrawny ribbon of beige, a sculpture of suburbia-shaped pulp. She had failed resolutely to rebel in the big ways, which is why she found herself always trying to hold her own in the small ways. "You're late," Chrissy spat at her soon-to-be husband, tapping her watch. "Good evening to you too, Chris." Todd pecked Chrissy on the cheek. Here, they looked comically incongruous. Chrissy, forever undertaking these new challenges with relish, and Todd breathless after the hour-long walk from their apartment. "Let's just get this over with, shall we?" said Todd, with a smirk on his face. "Where's Milo? Didn't you get his message? He can't come. What is that grin for? You know how much this means to me, Todd." "I know," Todd reassured her, taking her hand. "I know." Never had swapping opinions about a chick lit with a group of soccer moms over a bottle of cheap sorority rosé looked so frightening to Chrissy. "Good," she announced loudly, betraying a sudden strength of character beneath her sallow skin. "Let's do this." Almost immediately, Chrissy produced a flashlight, its crisp, cylindrical beam throwing sharp shafts of light over the dripping gloom, and a room that was now a rich repository of the past, a place that was once a refuge for any woman, its intake striding anyone from a widow with night terrors to a sexual deviant denouncing her family's Catholic faith. Chrissy read that at its peak, the sanatorium was home to up to 200 people. It was a number Chrissy almost found comforting. These women, united in their combined will to escape, now seemed more powerful than ever. "Are you sure we should be doing this, Chrissy?" asked Todd, trailing his fiancée. "What do you mean?" "We can do what we want." "No, but I mean, should you be doing this?" "I don't want to talk about that now." "I know, but..." "Shh! What was that?" The only sounds available to their naked ears were the scratch of their footfalls against the frost-crusted twigs and the steady plip of water, the hallmarks of any B-movie. The noise Chrissy managed to hear presented itself again, something anyone else would put down to the movement of a rat. "Did you hear that?" When Todd shook his head, Chrissy looked back and, aided by the dwindling light of her pathetic torch, saw a battery of glazed leporine eyes. "Oh my God, Milo!" Chrissy exhales, her breath white with frost. What are you doing here? I thought I'd make a last-minute appearance. Milo, Todd's longest and closest friend, said. Keep you on your toes. Did you know about this? Chrissy spat to Todd, her cheeks surrendering any of their remaining color. Why are we here again? Milo asked, comically unprepared, wearing just a shirt and jeans. Todd shrugged his shoulders. Ask her. She wanted to come here. She must have told you a reason. There is no reason, Milo. You know this. Actually, there is a reason, Chrissy corrects Todd. If you must know, my mother was here. Your mother? Chrissy. What? Todd asked, confused. You heard me. Just before the place shut down, she was admitted here. You never told me. I don't think you ever asked, Todd. Shall we move on, more determined than she had ever been? Chrissy stalked deeper into the darkness. So why was your mother here? Milo asked, closely following Chrissy. Milo! No, it's fine, Todd, replied Chrissy, grateful for the question. I don't know exactly how she came to be here. She didn't tell me. But when her dad died, her mom married again, and he started sexually assaulting her, raping her. Oh, shit. Yeah. And if that wasn't enough, she was abused by her own husband, my dad. But no one believed her. That would drive anyone into the loony bin. Chris, do you really think this is a good idea? Maybe we should go home, Todd advised. No, Todd. If you want to go home, that's fine. I'm staying. Chrissy's determination seemed almost thunderous in this confined space. It was a quality she inherited from her mother. A woman who the naysayers tried to force her into the identikit mold of the abused woman you might expect to see plastered on your TV screens and newspapers, blue and bloody beside the dishwasher. Instead, she was a born-again freedom fighter who learned her life lessons the hard way, like an up yours to a traditional fable. It was no wonder that Chrissy had such a difficult childhood. But she, much like her mother, refused to be packaged as a woman, fighting on the behalf of anyone who had ever been brutalized, anyone worn threadbare by abuse, anyone still haunted by the nightmares. Sharp, serrated pinpricks of terror, a spider-webbed mirror, a shard of glass, a calloused palm, the girl who used to throw bricks at street lamps and through store windows for nothing but her own amusement, who used to grieve as easily with laxatives as with a bottle of wine, and who used to hide the ladder of cuts on her arm, was no longer that little girl. Chrissy wasn't scared anymore. She had conquered her fear. She wanted to talk about her past, even if Todd didn't want her to. Todd liked to sugarcoat things and cower behind the happy illusion that things were better than they actually were. He wouldn't allow them to tackle issues head on. Say one of their golfing friends, clad in one of those Argyle sweaters, mid-slurp of Long Island iced tea, mid-bite of a crustless cucumber sandwich, brought it up. Todd would swat it away and insist that it was only temporary. If Chrissy wanted to talk about something as mundane as what they were having for dinner, that would be fine. But if she wanted to talk about how she came to be in a psychiatric hospital when she should have been spending her gap year in Phuket like any other student, then that would, of course, be off limits, which was why she had to come here, to this very hospital. Oh my God, what is this place? Milo asked, weirdly curious. This, Chrissy replied, happy to answer, was where they did the whole electroshock therapy thing. Milo shared a confused look with Todd. How do you know that? Chrissy smiled wryly. I just do. Chrissy couldn't help imagining her mother in this room, putting her legs in stirrups and placing herself at the mercy of a masochistic doctor. We are going to scour it out of you, he would spit, forcing a wet sponge between her lips. He would have her return a vegetable, someone who squeezes a nurse's hand to tell them you're still alive, someone who slurps liquidized food through a straw and shits in a bucket. With renewed determination, Chrissy crouched down to the floor, where it was dark and slippery, strewn with machine parts and moldy baby clothes. She reached into her backpack and produced a tumbler, a pen, and a piece of paper. What are you doing? Todd asked, his eyes following his partner's movements. I wasn't planning on doing it here, Chrissy said, frustrated. But if you would just work with me, then maybe we could... No, Todd objected immediately. If you're doing what I think you're doing, then I'm out. Oh, come on, Todd. Milo was surprisingly game. Don't be such a buzzkill. Last time I did it, Chrissy resumed, I could hear my mother's screams. You know, I could really talk to her. Todd shook his head defiantly. No, I'm not doing this. Chrissy switches off her torch and holds aloft a pack of candles before striking a match and lighting them. The feeble flames curl and sway and lick the dusty air. Are we ready? Chrissy asked, bathed in an ombre of red and black. Milo gestured to Todd to sit down. Finally, Todd acquiesced, taking them both by the hand so Chrissy could commence. Great. Thanks, Todd. That means a lot. Chrissy began by setting an upturned tumbler on the paper, before reaching into her jean pocket for the yellowed, crumpled remains of a photo of her mother and her crooked smile. A smile that, once upon a time, seemed to generate its own light, one that lit up everything around her. Don't break the circle, Chrissy instructed the two men. Whatever you do, do not break the circle. Okay, Milo said, his voice trembling slightly. Don't worry, Chrissy said warmly, forcing a note of levity, noticing that his voice had ascended an octave. That's exactly what I was like when I first tried it. Todd and Milo looked at one another once again, almost in awe at Chrissy's newfound pastime. Mom, Chrissy said, looking upwards, as though to some external force. If the answer is yes, please slide the glass to the right. And if the answer is no, please slide the glass to the left. Okay? Mom, are you with us? All eyes swiveled to the glass. Chrissy pursed her lips in nervous anticipation before looking up again, only a few moments later, to see the glass moving in Todd's direction to the right, its rim scraping across the floor. "Hiya, Mom." "Oh my God." Milo tried to retract his hand. "How did you—" "Shh." The glass moved back to the center. "Mom, I'm gonna ask you some questions, all right? How are you doing this?" Milo demanded. Todd silenced him with the whites of his eyes. "Mom?" Chrissy called out, trying to re-establish the connection. "Mom, are you okay?" The tumbler moved to the right again. Chrissy smiled. Milo turned to Todd, who he thought would be on his side at this point, given this was his first time as well. But he too was riveted to his spot. "Joe, Mom, if you're still there, could you please write something for us on this pen and paper?" Chrissy indicated the pen and paper in the center. The glass stirred yet again. "Ting, ting. That's amazing, Mom. What would you like to tell us?" The ballpoint was picked up and floated in mid-air before starting to glide across the page, leaving in its wake a long and inky sentence. "Tell them what they did to me, Chrissy. Tell them what they did," as a draft, wispy as a trail of jet exhaust, wafted across the room. All withering eyes, in unconscious tandem, moved in Chrissy's direction. The glass shattered. The whole room descended into a sudden flurry of accusations. And finally, the circle broke apart. "Jesus Christ!" Milo shouted, mopping his forehead with the back of his hand, trying to make sense of everything. "What just—" "I don't know," Todd answers, looking to Chrissy. I don't know." Chrissy's lips folded into a smile. "I told you it worked." "No." Milo stood back, his eyes wide with fear. "That is some nasty voodoo shit. Come on, Todd. She's crazy." "Crazy?" Chrissy said, feeling the cold fury hoard in her chest. "You think I'm crazy?" Seeking the exit, Milo ran headlong into the darkness, the scrape of his footfalls dissolving with his screams. "He won't get very far without a flashlight," Chrissy remarked. "He's right," Todd said, jerking to his feet. "You are crazy." "What?" "I don't know what's happened to you in these past few days, and I don't really care. But this has got to stop, Chris. It's this obsession. It's not normal." "You don't think I'm normal?" "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Todd screamed, his throat taut with desperation. "I mean, do you really understand what I'm saying?" "This," he continued, grabbing her jaw, spittle landing on his cheek as he enunciated each word, "is not normal." "Go then. I don't need you anymore. My mom's here." "Oh, for fuck's sake. Your mother isn't here." Chrissy so desperately wanted to prove her fiancé wrong. "Oh, really?" Chrissy could only sit and watch as the man she loved doubled back and wailed in pain, falling to the ground with a terrific thud. He reached for his foot, as though to favor his leg, much like a wounded animal. "What the fuck?" Todd tweaked his trouser leg to reveal a 3-pronged scratch on the back of his leg. "Did that hurt?" she asked, savoring this moment. Something changed in Todd's expression. His surroundings suddenly felt hazy and distant, as though on the other side of a glass wall. "You're insane, Chrissy," he said, struggling to his feet, running for the exit. "You're insane." This was Chrissy's cue to look back in her bag and find her EMF meter, holding it out in front of her. It made a distinct clicking noise, its crackle like the one that heralded the beginning of a Western or a grainy VHS tape. "Mom, he's gone," Chrissy said, checking Todd had definitely left. "It's just us now, I promise you, just us." Chrissy sank to the ground and tried to keep an absolute silence, so that all could be heard was the solitary metronome of her EMF meter. "I'm here now, Mom. I'm here." Click, click, click. Social proof. Ethan reoriented his phone and pushed his stocking cap back to reveal more of his hair before offering his audience a 2-fingered peace sign. Hey, guys. What's up?" Aiden raked Ethan's hand. "Dude, what the hell? What's gotten into you?" Sam chortled, recording both of them on his phone through a cloud of steamy breath. "Scared? No," Aiden barked, glaring apprehensively into Sam's camera. "I'm black, moron. Shit like this gets a brother killed." In response to Aiden's misgivings, heart, laughing, and smiling emojis floated up Aiden's image on Sam's screen. Feeling smug, Sam showed Aiden the immediate, real-time results. Aiden rolled his eyes. "Whatever, fool. They ain't black." Ethan resumed a filming position with a sarcastic smile, framing the tall fence behind him in the background. "Don't worry, Aiden, buddy. We'll be good and gone before anybody notices. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go." Sam impatiently gestured to the shadowy mansion. Pressing on, Sam directed his mobile to the naked, claw-like limbs of bare trees that lined the drive, reaching over their heads. "It don't look like anybody's been here lately since the 60s, Aiden said, jutting his hands into his pockets and hunching his shoulders. Trespassing aside, something felt eerie about the property. He felt eyes crawling all over him. Been shuttered ever since. It was foreclosed on by the bank after Thaddeus's grandson died. The house is old, protected by some kinda historical preservation law. They wanted to put a Walmart here, but couldn't. It can't be knocked down. Our resident bookworm and brown noser, ladies and gentlemen, Ethan said, capturing him and Aiden in the shot and bowing to his camera. "Yeah, I read, okay?" Aiden said, shoving Ethan away. "This is it, peeps," Sam said, angling his phone to take a wide shot of the property. "Thornbrook Manor." Ethan interrupted Sam to draw a dramatic, wide-eyed slash across his throat with his finger. "The third sorcerer." Annoyed, Aiden glanced side-eyed at Sam's phone and shrugged, speaking directly to Sam's followers. "It's where the geocache told us to go next. Abhorrent ground," Sam whispered ominously. reciting a phrase they found written in the cache. Flipping the phone's camera to face him, his face was uplit in the darkness. WTF! What's that even mean? Built in the 1860s outside of Seattle, the Thornbrook property was considered an architectural gem of Victorian elegance and grandeur. Dilapidated, weathered, and crumbled, its glamorous splendor, however, was lost to the past. Situated on a lush estate, the mansion boasted a commanding presence with a towering 3-story roofline, with 4 chimneys and 2 pointed spires. Its exterior facade was crafted with intricate details, replete with ornate carvings of strange and fanciful beasts, sturdy stone pillars, and delicate trimmings that lent the structure an artistic flair. Its architect was both an engineer and an artist. Its front doors were made of rich mahogany and intricately carved, yet spray painted with urban gang tags. "What is that?" Sam said. He focused his camera on a carving along the structure's foundation. It had a rounded body with taloned hands, a sloping ape-like brow, and an angry expression bearing menacing, jagged teeth, yet had stone wings like a bird. It looked tethered to the building by a black iron chain. That's a water drain," Aiden replied. "Water comes down the chain into the monkey's skull, spilling out the mouth." "Ugh," Sam groaned, zooming in on it. "That's crazy. What kind of acid were these guys on?" "Opium," Aiden clarified with a nod, thinking, then added, leaning into Sam's camera. "That or absinthe, herbs, sugar, ice, wood alcohol, big-ass psychedelic effects brought on from consuming thujone, a compound." Look! Ethan interrupted, cutting Aiden off, holding his own phone over his head as they approached a ruined reflecting pool in an overgrown garden sanctuary. Surrounded by a wrought iron fence, the pool's still black surface reflected the sky's cold, starry void. "There's the statue," Adis rumbled into Sam's camera. Friendly heart emojis raced up the side of his face. "Yeah, well, if you're curious and want to know more, DM me." "Come on, Brainiac," Sam scolded, slapping Aiden on his shoulder. Sam turned his camera's flash away from the monkey creature to send it receding into the darkness. Cautiously entering the gate, they circled the pool to step through an overgrowth of thorny black bushes with serrated, tar-colored leaves. A marble statue of a Victorian gentleman, leaning heavily on a cane, loomed over the pool's edge. Soiled by centuries of grime and vigorous splotches of mold, thorny brambles climbed its legs and torso. "Dr. Thaddeus Parlow," Aiden whispered, scanning through Wikipedia articles on his device. He passed the links on to the audience through social media. Sam zoomed in on Parlow's vandalized head. Chiseled away, it looked as if it were mauled. Chunks of marble were gouged from Parlow's face. Hundreds of shocked and gasping emojis went scrolling by. Sam zoomed back, panned, and held his phone horizontally to keep Ethan and the statue in the frame. "We've got more than 1,600 viewers, man. Play it," chided Ethan's followers. Little blue bubbles of text went floating by. Okay, I'm going to play it. Just hang on," Ethan promised his followers before turning his phone around to navigate its settings. Ethan, I don't think." Aiden's eyes trailed from his phone to the water. Sam could barely contain himself and removed his cap. He fixed his phone on Ethan. "Man, this is going to be so great," reflected upon the smooth black surface of the pool. Aiden saw a sharp, vivid reflection of the Milky Way. However, looking up, ambient light from the city obscured the night sky, and it was cloudy, overcast, a typical Seattle night. Puzzled, Aiden absently asked, Ethan?" Closing on Sam, Ethan held up his phone up to Sam's and pressed play to stream the video. A cheesy, AI-generated black and white image of a man with the head of an octopus appeared, followed by a grainy, scratchy recording, as if sampled from a wax cylinder. "Fahanglui magluanaf Cthulhu ralya wagahanagul fetarn," recited the octopus man in a low, spectral voice. Thousands of emojis raced up Sam's display, and his follower count skyrocketed. Elated, Sam pumped the air, shouting, Yeah, Wuganagel Ftagan, fuckers, bring it on." Ethan mocked with a sarcastic sneer and a crude, offensive gesture into Sam's camera. "Aya, Cthulhu Ftagan, to drill Ngkthikri Dagon," the recording concluded, leaving only a still, uncomfortable silence. Seeing the statue's mutilated head reflected in the pool of dreamy starlight, Aiden backed away to glance at Thaddeus, and then back at the water. The statue's angle against the surface was all wrong. "How's that possible?" he breathed, replaying the video on his phone. Ethan shook his mobile at Sam and shouted, "That's it! The third Sorcerer's Challenge! Woo! Look!" Sam exclaimed, holding out his phone. A Bitcoin balance was leaping ahead in hundreds of increments. "We won, man. Where's all of that shit coming from?" Ethan said, peering at Sam's phone. Sam turned the phone toward him and manipulated its settings. "Dunno. Some guy in Amsterdam." Ethan squinted. "Amsterdam? Where's that?" "Who cares?" Sam exclaimed. "We're gonna be rich." "Sam," Aiden pleaded, pointing to the pool and gripping Sam's jacket by the sleeve. "Something's wrong." Sam jerked his arm back. "Bro, what the?" Following Aiden's hand, Sam saw the impossibly bright, brilliant universe and the crisp reflection of Thaddeus Parlow's statue, except it wore a ghostly, bearded face. Before Sam could react, Ethan, his back to the pool, held his phone contemptuously under the statue's chin to replay the video. Sam returned his phone to a recording position. "Ia, Cthulhu Vahtagn, to drill Unkthikkakri Dagon," repeated the grainy octopus man. Sam and Aiden cried out, just as a massive blue and green scaled tentacle burst from the reflecting pool, gripped Ethan's leg, then dragged him screaming into the water. The light from Ethan's submerged phone sank into the pool's depths and disappeared. "Jesus fuck!" Aiden shouted, throwing himself from the side of the pool against the iron fence. Sam's phone, his thousands of followers witnessing the entire event, burst into a flurry of shocked, worried, and sad emojis. From the shadows, the chained monkeys squatting along the manor's cornerstones grinned, howling in terror. Aiden grabbed Sam to bolt for the iron gate. But as they ran, the thick, thorny, weedy brambles snagged their jeans and shot out to wrap around their legs. Tripped, Sam fell, sending his phone skittering across the cobblestone surrounding the pool. "Sam!" Aiden cried, reaching back for him, only to find Sam's body ensnared in the grips of the wicked Flora, pinned against the fence's bars. Sam pleaded, extending his arm to Aiden. "Help! Help!" Tugging, the thorns ripped into Aiden's skin and tore at his legs and ankles. He could feel the lacerations, the blood saturating his jeans. Aiden struggled and tried to get closer to Sam, only to find tendrils of strangling, grinding vines cutting into Sam's throat. His eyes bulged and bled, and he choked on a protruding mouthful of black leaves. It began to rain, scared, senseless. Aiden scrambled backward to lunge for the iron gate. Shut tight by the snaking weeds, it barely budged. Aiden glanced behind him in horror. The statue of Dr. Thaddeus, Harlow, remained as it was, and always had been, except its vivid, colorful reflection was a ghastly monster with a translucent nest of writhing tentacles waving from its jaw. The pool was still, unmoving, as if coated in a layer of sheer, translucent ice. The raindrops did not affect its surface. The pool was disorienting, mesmerizing, spinning. It was as if the whole of the universe lay open at Dr. Parlow's feet. "Absinthe, my ass," Aiden shouted, bracing his foot against an iron post to pull at the gate with all of his weight to rip it free of the twisting vines. Fleeing from the sanctuary, a wind bellowed from the chimneys, blowing from inside the mansion with a terrifying roar. Slipping on the mud, his heart pounding, lungs burning, Aiden ran with everything he had down the drive and scaled the fence. And without even a second glance, he sprinted away, leaving his friends forever at Thornbrook Manor. Glowing in the darkness, the video of the octopus man replayed on a loop, while a mass of emojis, check-in waves, Bitcoin balances, and DM requests flooded Sam's phone, before a green tentacle reached out from the water, cupped it, and slowly slid it into the pool. Shimmering silver, and lo, it rained from the sky. Ripples of blue echoed through the air, akin to the early morning. as if the sun rent the veil of night. Terror enveloped me, but in wonderment, that fear fast diminished. The stiz of the night sky dulled in its presence, as the horizon was engulfed by billowy white clouds, tinged with fiery wisps at their fringes, as the light faded and the celestial gift plummeted to earth. Its descent, accompanied by a shrill and discordant whistle, the ephemeral day drew to a close and yielded once more to the night. The stars reclaimed their brilliance, and the blue turned to black. My eyes were unable to avert their gaze from this wondrous sight, for it was a blissful offering from the heavens that had fallen into the nearby woods, a gift meant for me to open. Curiosity stirred within me, urging me to quell any lingering doubts. I resolved to march towards the crater and pull at the ribbon. This treasure would be mine, and mine alone. I longed to weave my hands through its warmth, allowing it to cool against my breath. I loved it, truly and deeply. That distant thud that shuddered the house upon its landing was a summons directed at me, a beckoning that could not be ignored. It craved my affection. A nervous dread enveloped me as I ventured through the gnarled branches of the forest, the scent of gasoline and wood smoke pervading the air. The fumes stung my eyes, obscuring my surroundings in a milky haze. Without the need for sight, I followed the call that brought me to the hearth of this fire, not conveyed in words, but in a sorrowful melody that could be felt in each nerve of my being. Once again, the dread is hammered down, pushed deep below the all-encompassing love, until its weight rendered it to a mere powder. Large swells of smoke undulated from the center of the impact. They swirled in a tumultuous motion, reminiscent of the foaming waves of an enraged sea crashing upon steadfast rocks. Within this chaotic display, a cocoon of pale, crystalline air gleamed with grandeur. As I ventured closer, my sweat evaporated into wisps of vapor that quickly became one with the swelling smoke. With a sweeping motion, I waved my hand through the glaze and arrived at its core. A shimmering silver presence floated before me. The tears washed my eyes clear so that I could gaze upon it without hindrance. It blotted out the sky, an immense entity that defied reason. And yet I found myself able to cradle it within the palm of my hand. Its touch ignited the ground and transformed the landscape into a fiery inferno, while an inexplicable chill permeated the air. At first glance, it appeared a flawless, perfectly round sphere, but in the next moment, it danced and twirled around me like raindrops caught in a volatile storm. It possessed the ability to mirror the surroundings, reflecting the woods with pristine clarity. And then, in the blink of an eye, it transformed into a radiant light, coated in an oil-like substance that bestowed upon it all the colors of the rainbow, shifting in hue from dusk to dawn. "I am here," I said, though the words were not solely my own, as they harmoniously echoed from the mouths of others surrounding me. Men, women, and children wept in unison. We had all answered its call, yet my love surpassed theirs. The essence of who I am wailed as well, but I disregarded their cries and sought solace in the shade of the towering trees, those too strong and old to be ripped up from the ground. Their shade would shield me from the sight of what I had to do, what the silver needed of me. It could love only one. Their blood warmed my hands as the core of this silver was washed with a chill air. "Have I earned your love?" I asked. My voice resounded in solitude. The words curled in the air with grace like a spectral mist. The wind took my question, ascended high until it could no longer be seen, blended into the bright light of the silver entity. And in that moment, fear seized me. Incomprehensible utterances trembled through the broken branches of the surrounding trees. Leaves bled embers, and the ground receded beneath me. The dread and doubt that I had buried, crushed, and disregarded were no longer fleeting moments of uncertainty. They had consumed my entire existence. For a brief spell, I was free to see that I had become prey, groomed and lured by that which hungered mightily. I rose high, as light as a feather caught in the storm, akin to spoken words ensnared in searing mist on a cold night. The silver transmuted into something else entirely. Initially, it enveloped me in a blanket of velvet warmth. Soon thereafter, tendrils began to thread through my skin, knitting us together as one. At first, it felt like love, a pulse of soft ecstasy, goose-pimpling my skin. But that moment was fleeting. Soon after, I could feel pure ice weave through my bones. I looked on as it clambered over my body, its face taking shape until the silver became a mirror, the reflection a scared man, a familiar stranger. As it kissed me, I felt myself fall back down to earth and into the dark. The ground was where I awoke, reminiscent of an abandoned runt from the litter. Nestled amidst the fallen leaves, I awaited the break of true day. At first, I crawled, my movements uncertain, until the recollection of walking flooded back to me. Faltering over clumsy feet towards my mother, her radiance shimmered with pride. She couldn't hold back the tears, a memory long forgotten and not my own, brought to the surface only now that it was needed. I ran, as an inexplicable force propelled me forward, urging me to something unknown. It evoked within me an overwhelming desperation, an emotion so deep I struggled to grasp an understanding of its purpose. I dashed homeward, burst through the door, and tumbled up the stairs. A confusing dread clawed at its cage. The sight of an empty bed where two once slumbered brought me to tears. But why? In the adjacent room, a smaller bed intended for a child remained empty and unmade. Two voices among the countless last night now bore an eerie familiarity. The dried blood that coated my arms began to burn and itch. A lingering presence persisted within me, a parasite of the man that should be long lost amidst the rubble of the void. In boundless darkness, his tormented screams resounded and reverberated through the depths of my being, erupting from my own lips in a howl of pain, wrestling control. The feeble flickering of light, mere fleeting moments of dominance, witnessed this vessel gain possession of a knife. "I am your gift," I whispered to him, my voice laced with wisdom. "Watch from your shelter of safety as I give purpose to your existence. Allow my love to radiate through you, turning the shadows into everlasting day." Yet he paid no heed to my words, dismissing my guidance without a second thought. I plunged it deep into my throat, succumbing to the irrepressible urge to die, as if it had become my sole purpose. Deeper still, I drove the blade until the pouring wound wept tears of red. And then, shimmering silver, the care and feeding of monsters. Sol looked around the mansion with distaste. She didn't like being here, and she certainly didn't like what she had heard about the monster who used to live here. Not that she put much credence in the old tales that some of the more senior members of the Lollipop Guild talked about. Those wizened relics of the past had many tales to tell. All the stories outrageous, and all the events sounding just a little too fantastic to believe. Via poked around the foyer and the living area, marveling at the size of the place and grimacing at the thick coat of grime and dust that covered every surface. She had drawn back every curtain on the ground floor, yet the area remained dark and suffocating. Curious, the high, vaulted ceilings spiraled upwards, seemingly without end, but the claustrophobic feeling stayed. The ancient wood creaked and groaned with every step she took, voicing its complaint in sonorous, funereal tones. She wanted to leave right now, but she had a prospective client. This place had been on the books for over 100 years, and getting it sold would be a major coup for her. She had visions of a corner office and a hefty bonus. The realtor overcame her fears and waited. But she waited outside, a wicked witch indeed. What ridiculous tripe! Franklin Baumgartner looked around the mansion. Via thought his eyes looked dead, but, she reasoned, that could be the effect of the poor light in the mansion. His assistant, A Miss Holcomb also had a lifeless look about her. Their size bothered Via. The man towered over everyone in the land, standing almost 6 feet tall. The woman was a giant as well. Their attire was odd, and their actions startling. "Miss Holcomb, take some notes," Baumgartner snapped. Miss Holcomb dutifully took out a notepad and readied herself for the onslaught to come. "Replace the windows, double-paned, insulated with argon gas. Make that triple-paned, American-made. Always buy American-made, Miss Holcomb. None of that Chinese shit. Get some people in here to reinforce the floorboards. They squeak like a bitchy wife. Cleaning crew. Make that cruise American cruise." Miss Holcomb pushed her glasses back on her face and peered up at her boss. "No, hire the illegals that come over here. They'll work cheap and do a good job. Remember, Miss Holcomb, buy American, hire foreign." "Got it, sir," Miss Holcomb said. She wrote rapidly and then paused, waiting for more. "Contact Kate Mueller in Chicago. Have her come in and furnish this place. Spare no expense. It's a fucking mausoleum right now. Get Halliburton to give me a call. I hear wolves out there. He's good at killing things. Gardeners, of course. Lots of them. The land has gone to hell. Oh, and I saw some beehives out there. Find me a beekeeper. If the bees aren't producing honey, we'll exterminate them. The roof needs to be checked." Baumgartner went on like this for some time. Miss Holcomb wrote furiously, nodding occasionally, and staying 6 feet behind her employer. Via Sol didn't show it, but she was confused and alarmed. She had never heard of the places mentioned. America, Canada, Chicago. The man also used language that was unfamiliar to her, especially the word beginning with a foo sound, or bitchy. Maybe it's their way of saying itchy. And maybe the foo word is a term of endearment. Via was snapped out of her reverie by Baumgartner's stentorian voice. "Miss Sol? Hey, you still with us?" Via looked up and almost stood at attention. "Of course, yes. So, the price? You have it listed as 133 lollipops. That must be a typo." Baumgartner frowned at her. He didn't approve of sloppy work. "No, sir, that's the price. But we can negotiate." "Lollipops?" "Yes, sir. I'm assuming that you can pay in lollipops." "Hell no, missy. We use good old American dollars. The best currency in the world, I'll have you know." "Lollipops? What the hell kind of lollipop do you require? Are they lined with gold?" Well, no. That is, they're just lollipops." Baumgartner looked at his assistant impassively. He blinked and shook his head. Miss Holcomb waited patiently for something to write down. "Show me," Baumgartner said. Via nodded, confused as to why someone needed to see what was widely considered the coin of the realm. She went outside to her horse and buggy, retrieving a couple of lollipops. She went back inside the mansion, not easy in her mind. Baumgartner stared at them for some time. He inspected them closely, twirled them in his fingers, and even sniffed them. He handed one to Miss Holcomb, who mimicked her boss's actions. Am I to understand that these lollipops are made with sugar? Nothing else? Just sugar and some natural coloring, I think. I'm not sure. The Lollipop Guild makes them, and they guard their secrets carefully. Baumgartner nodded. Although confused by the method of payment, he didn't hesitate to take advantage of the situation. What'll you take for these lollipops? Cash? Goods? Baumgartner eyed Via closely, noting her body language. He was successful in part because of his ability to read people. Well, I was going to purchase some new clothes after work. Food for the winter. Grain for the horse, Via said. She was nervous. The conversation about money bothered her. No one talked about money here. No one at all. Baumgartner considered what the realtor said. He whispered to his assistant. She nodded lightly and wrote something down on her notepad. Tell you what, Miss Soul, I'll bring you a new horse when I come back, if you give me one of these. Via gasped. A new horse would normally cost 7 lollipops. She tried to keep her composure. The man is an idiot. However, I could use a new horse. Poor old Rusty is getting old, and maybe I could get a little more out of this dolt. A new horse is acceptable, but I think I'd want a little more. Maybe throw in 100 kilos of grain for the new horse. Baumgartner accepted quickly. The woman's a dolt, selling this place for 133 lollipops, and all she wants is a new horse and some feed. Jesus, this is gonna be easy. We'll be back next week. Have the papers ready to sign. I'll have the, payment in full, Baumgartner said. He didn't even try to haggle over the price. He was starting to love this exchange rate. Baumgartner was as good as his word. He paid for the mansion and bought Via a new horse, along with supplying her with an impressive amount of grain for the horse. Still, Via was disturbed. The stranger found his way to her homeland. There were tales about a farm girl who had done this, but that was nothing more than a story that the old ones told. Baumgartner was indeed from another land. Kansas. His Aunt Elle had given him what was left of the family farm, and he sold it quickly, at a ridiculously low price. His aunt was dead. The farm was not a moneymaker, and he hated farming. The only thing he kept was a pair of silver slippers, for they entranced him. In the light, they turned into a fiery, ruby-red color. Aunt Elle also told him that he could transport himself to a magical land by wearing the slippers and wishing himself to this nebulous place. The slippers were far too small to wear, and he didn't believe such nonsense anyway. One night, after drinking in excess, a particularly cheap and poor quality of a Chianti, he tried it. Frank found himself in the middle of a poppy field, staring at a city that seemed entirely made of green crystals. He took one of the crystals and closed his eyes again, wishing himself back home. Emeralds. The green crystals were emeralds. He made several trips like this and became rich. He also discovered streets made of gold bricks. He helped himself to plenty of these as well. When he returned, he found that the gold bricks and the emeralds had been replaced. Frank had no qualms about taking more emeralds and more gold from this place. None at all. Frank Baumgartner had found Oz. The inhabitants of the land that Baumgartner invaded were becoming unhappy with their new neighbor. He had a landing strip built for his private jet. The people thought it was a monstrous steel dragon and fled every time it landed or departed. The same emotions arose when Baumgartner drove his vehicle. To them, it was nothing more than an iron terror roaming through their land. Queen Ozma demanded that the stranger leave. He refused. She had no recourse to his refusal. No one had ever defied the queen before, so she was at a loss as to what to do. They had no police force, for there was no crime. They had no standing army, for they had no enemies. Until now, Baumgartner paid well in lollipops. This became a problem, a huge problem. The economy was turned upside down and inside out. Munchkins and Winkies, with newfound wealth, invaded Emerald City and bought up desirable plots of land and built houses. Baumgartner built several yellow-bricked roads that led to Emerald City, and the flood of country people to the city was unsustainable. The new royalty had been, just a short time before, farmers and craftsmen. The Lollipop Guild had been decimated by the influx of lollipops from Baumgartner. Inflation ran rampant. And then a recession hit. Everyone felt its effects, and the people of all four quadrants of the land found themselves struggling to survive. Baumgartner didn't care. He was rich in America, but here he was a god. He controlled the lands, the supply chains, the very fabric of life. Poverty became the new normal. We have to do something. Vaya slammed her fist on the table. The Munchkins looked at her with surprise and consternation. She had never been so demonstrative. Via Sol had always been the epitome of grace and charm. Goru stood up, though it made little difference in his height relative to everyone else. He was short, even for a Munchkin, but he commanded respect. The eldest member of the Lollipop Guild had been Goru for the past 70 years, and his word meant something. I have a solution, but you aren't going to like it, he said. A quietness overtook the room. If Gora said that it would be displeasing, then it would be very displeasing. The council braced itself. Goro outlined his plan. Everyone was horrified, but they agreed to it. Effie sensed the munchkin well before he came into sight. She sniffed the air and smelled fear, desperation, sadness. Goro stopped short when he saw Effie. It had been 20 years since she had been banished to the edge of Munchkin Land. Although he had voted against the banishment, he still felt a thrill of fear. Effie was dangerous. All her kind were dangerous. What brings the great and powerful Gora to my humble shack? Effie picked up a snake and stroked it gently before putting it back on the ground and giving it a shove with her toe. The snake slithered off into the underbrush, looking for a meal. A stranger from the outer lands. A bad person, Effie. Very bad. We need your help, Goro said, looking down. He was afraid to meet Effie's eyes. I have no quarrel with you, Gora. You didn't vote against me when I was banished. But why should I help? I was exiled because of my grandmother. Goro nodded. She was right. She had no reason to help. But I will, Effie said softly, because the stranger has something of mine. Goro looked at her, surprised. You know about the stranger. I may be restricted to the edge of the desert, but I hear things, she said. Because the animals tell me. Goro believed her. Effie's grandmother understood the animals. I'll come to the council next week, when it's over. I'll want something in return, though. Goro nodded. He was empowered to agree to almost anything. What? Effie looked at Gora and smiled. It was a beautiful smile, so unlike her grandmother's wicked leer. My grandmother's old house. Goro expected this. He nodded, and then he left as quickly as possible. The edge of the desert frightened him, and Effie frightened him most of all. He thought of a saying he had heard long ago, needs must, when the devil drives. He would wonder, years later, who the devil really was. Effie flew above the trees on her umbrella, scanning the countryside. She knew the area well, for she had been raised in Winky country. Her old house looked different, modern and bright. She hated it. A portly man came outside and looked around, hands on hips. Effie's tremendous sight allowed her to see him clearly. He had a mug look on his face. Odd clothes covered his portly frame, and he was smoking a cigar. Effie banked sharply and flew toward the man. He finally spotted her and stared at her in surprise and fear. She saw his eyes widen. He screamed just as her umbrella penetrated his heart. The umbrella settled gently on the ground as Effie stepped off. She strode to the man and took the briefcase. She had what she wanted. She had what belonged to her. We have to do something, Vaya said miserably. She didn't slam her hand on the table as she had done all those years ago, but the tone of her voice revealed her desperation. Goro and the rest of the council agreed. Effie had been a hero 20 years ago when she killed the giant stranger and everyone else in her grandmother's old house. The land was freed from the bonds of American capitalism and its monstrous ways. Now, however, she was as her grandmother had been, wicked and controlling. The flying monkeys were back, as were the giant white wolves and the huge black bees. They had gotten so used to smallish wolves and gentle honeybees that the new, more dangerous versions were even more frightening than ever. What can we do? We made a deal, and she took advantage. Guru talked quietly, as usual, but his voice was tinged with defeat. He saw no way out. It's like the old days, he continued, when her grandmother ruled Winky Land. But worse. Effie seems to have a vendetta against us. So, we're sunk. Back to the way things were in the old days, and no stupid farm girl to bail us out, another member said. Where did she come from? Kansas? Where the hell is that? Vaya was willing to travel past the deserts if need be. Somewhere over the rainbows, Vaya. Somewhere we can't reach. Effie sat in her darkened mansion and smiled, stroking the fur of a wolf and listening to the angry buzzing of the black bees flitting about her abode. She had reclaimed her family power. The witch still remembered the day her mother died. She had been behind a curtain when the incident occurred, watching the events unfold. When the strange girl doused her mother with water, she gasped. Her mother melted in front of her eyes. Effie had never seen such a gruesome sight in her life. But that wasn't the end of the bad news. She had been banished to the edge of the desert, though the council that banished her knew full well that she would, in all probability, die from this. The only member to vote in her favor was Gora. Effie, though, had been taught how to survive by her mother. She flourished. Her hate grew. And then another stranger showed up, and with the magical slippers, her mother's slippers, and the last remaining source of all witchy power, just a pair of shoes, silver. But they fit her feet perfectly, almost like they were made for her. Now that she was the only living witch in Oz, she could rule all the lands, not just Winky Land. There was a new ruler of the land, and she wasn't about to forget what the inhabitants had done to her or her mother. Effie scanned the skies for flying houses. It wouldn't do to neglect the lessons from the past. She grabbed her umbrella and took off across the land, flying low and fast, observing her domain. Effie was on her way to Emerald City to depose the queen. She has a date with the point of my umbrella today. I look forward to the smell of royal blood spilled on the streets of Emerald City. My only regret is that she can't melt like my mother did. Effie flew on, over poppy fields and verdant landscape. Evil had returned to Oz. The monster they all feared was a woman with silver slippers on her feet and hate in her heart. The queen has an expiration date. Evil has no such restriction. Speed, fate, high buck. Thanks for taking part in the recent Speed Fate speed dating event and submitting your feedback. We hope you enjoyed the evening. Please find below a copy of the comments you left for each of your dates. You will receive feedback submitted about you in a separate mail. Should any of those you said yes to also say yes to you, we will forward each of you a copy of your contact information so you can get in touch. The very best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team. Buck Tucker dated the following people: 18th July 2023, and left the following feedback. Mandy Rogers, age 37, self-help guru. You said, fun person. Quick smile, bubbly. The conversation flowed from the get-go. Love the curls. She had so much to say and was passionate about her interests, even if they were a bit airy-fairy. If there's one thing I respect, it's passion about your subject of choice. Refreshing to meet someone as firm a believer in destiny as Mandy is. Could talk to her for hours about sliding doors and parallel universes. Would love to delve deeper into her thoughts on escapable fate. Great date. Would you like to meet Mandy again? Yes. Evelyn Pierce, age 35. School teacher. You said, Evelyn is a dark horse. Shy to start, but relaxed as the date went on. I was nervous too, because she's very smart. I felt dumb by comparison. Very impressed by her career. She seems to be a great teacher, very professional. I get the impression she could be successful at anything she turns her hand to, even partnering with me. She has the voice of authority. It just needs to be strengthened. She could broaden my horizons on intellectual topics, and I could teach her about life outside the classroom. Definitely see potential here. Would you like to meet Evelyn again? Yes. Katerina Cruz, age 38, physical therapist. You said. Not much to say about Katerina, except wow. I didn't know Drop Dead Gorgeous was an actual thing. But as soon as I left her table, I felt part of me die, or at least abandon ship so it could stay behind. Her eyes really drew me in. Could get lost in them for hours, not to mention everything else. Her English isn't great, but that didn't matter. Her body language did the talking. Can tell she doesn't take shit from anyone. And with those muscles, you wouldn't want to forget her birthday. Bit intimidating, but that's a turn on. So it's a yes from me. Would you like to meet Katerina again? Yes. Ashley Davenport, age 41, office admin. You said, Ashley is a bit mousy. Not my type physically, but has an air of mystery about her, which is attractive. Not sure why she was at the event. She was an ice queen, and I had to work hard to make conversation. Wasn't very successful. Didn't find out much about her, other than that she has cats and works in admin. I'm not a cat person, but I have a dog who hates cats, so he would probably chase them off if we got together. Pretty sure she just had her walls up. I have a feeling I could get her to loosen up. I am 100% sure it would be worth it. It would be nice to see her show some emotion. Challenge accepted. Would you like to meet Ashley again? Yes, to Buck Tucker from Speed Fate Team. Date, 19th July, 2023, 16:31. Subject, your speed. Fate. Feedback. Hi Buck. Thanks again for attending the recent Speed Fate speed dating event. We have now compiled the feedback we received from the people you met and have included it below. You will receive the contact information for anyone who said yes, that you said yes to, also in a separate mail. The best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team. Mandy Rogers, age 37, yoga teacher. They said, Buck was a pleasure to talk with. Very open-minded, and I didn't get the impression he was humoring me when I was rattling on about chakras and meditation. He seemed to be genuinely fascinated. Was interesting hearing his views on the afterlife and reincarnation. He carries a lot of nomadic energy and seems to be as much of a free spirit as I am, even if yoga and mindfulness aren't his thing. Would definitely like to bounce more ideas off him. I promised him a tarot reading if we meet again. So here's hoping. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Evelyn Pierce, age 35, school teacher. They said, Buck is great. He's a lot more adventurous than me. Very extrovert, which is exciting. I need someone like that to get me out of my comfort zone. Raising 2 teenagers as a full-time single dad is not an easy task, so I take my hat off to him. Also impressed by his role as a part-time scout leader, setting time aside to take kids camping and teach them about the great outdoors. That's inspirational. Would definitely be interested in getting to know him better. Always a sucker for a good dad. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Katerina Cruz, age 38, physical therapist. They said, Buck is interesting, man. Similar interest in keep fit, training for marathon. Now, I think he has a lot of work to do, but is good. He has goal to work for. Perhaps he needs some help training. Little out of shape. But I don't have heart to say. Cute smile, kind eyes, love bearded man. Also interested in his musical career. Must be nice to date with guitarist of upcoming rock band. I think I should like to see this. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes. Ashley Davenport, age 41, office admin. They said, God loves a trier. I gave him nothing, but he kept on trucking. Bonus points for that. If I was him, I would have given up in the first minute, like everyone else. 5 must have been torture. Really hate this shit. Only did it 'cause my friends signed me up, and I never would have heard the end of it. Whatever. Promise I'll make more of an effort next time. Not that he's going to want to meet me again. He'd probably sooner throw himself under a bus. Would they like to meet you again? They said, yes, to Buck Tucker from Fate. Team. Date. 20th July, 2023, 11:30. Subject, your speed. Fate. Contacts. Hi, Buck. Please find attached contact information for your matches from the speed date event you attended on July 16th, 2023. We hope you had an enjoyable experience and have our fingers crossed. One of your matches will be the one. We've had a number of success stories to date, some leading to marriage, and are always interested in hearing how things go. The best of luck, and thanks for choosing Speed Fate. The Speed Fate team, dressed in his least shabby suit, well-worn blue check shirt, newly bought navy tie, and doused in the least repulsive knockoff Hugo Boss aftershave he could find. Tucker drew a well-practiced smile onto his goatee-framed jaw and slid into the seat opposite his date, the redhead in the white dress, whose hair was tied back in a hastily knotted ponytail and whose name was displayed on the sticker attached to her chest. Evelyn, he announced, clasping his hands together and placing his elbows on the table. So good to see you. I was delighted to hear you wanted to meet me again. I felt we had a good connection, even though we only talked for 5 minutes. How have you been? How are those school kids? Hope they've been listening to teacher across the white-clothed tabletop, past the bottle of champagne chilling in a stainless steel cooler, 2 sparkling champagne flutes, and the candle protruding from a chrome holder. Evelyn met Tucker's gaze and swallowed the lump of saliva that had stuck in her throat. He hadn't thought it possible for her to be more nervous than she'd been at the speed date, especially since they knew each other now. But there she was, eyes darting about, glancing at the people either side of them, beads of sweat visible on her brow. It was going to be harder than he thought to get her to loosen up, he realized. But that didn't matter. In a way, he found her nervousness endearing. They're fine, she said, her voice coming out a whisper, forcing her to clear her throat. They're good. They don't give me trouble. I never have to reprimand anyone. Really? There's not a single troublemaker in the bunch? What age did you say they were? Tucker reached forward abruptly, suit sleeve riding up his arm, and closed his hand around the neck of the champagne bottle, causing Evelyn to jump, eyes darting to his unclean fingers. 14, she said, returning her eyes to his as he took the bottle from the cooler. and started undoing the wire, holding its cork in place. And 15. No, honestly, nothing like that. I've never had to punish anyone, if that's what you mean. I see, Tucker said, narrowing his eyes as if to peer into her mind. Bit boring, isn't it? All that authority, and there's not a single obnoxious teenager for you to use it on? I find that hard to believe. As a former teenager in a school full of stuck-up bitches and bullying brats, I find that extremely hard to believe. But hey, if that's what you're saying, pop! The cork shot from the bottle with explosive energy, making the nervous teacher jump again. I'll take your word for it. How about your colleagues? They all super nice, too? Come on, you can be honest. Bet there's a couple of real shits, right? Get off on tormenting the kids? Probably a few pervs, too. Pedo bastards? I know there were at my school. Oh, I know. Can think of at least 3 motherfuckers who deserved to have their dicks cut off, sitting forward, extending his arm, pouring bubbly liquid into his date's glass. He glared as she shook her head softly, almost imperceptibly, and sucked in her lips. He snorted, smiled, a shake of the head as he finished pouring, and moved the bottle to his own glass. You don't have to be so nervous, Evelyn. It's just me and you. You can tell me anything. I'm very open-minded, a man of the world. I know the way things work. I'm familiar with what goes on behind closed doors. In response to his comment about it being just him and her eyes had flicked to the left and right again, almost as if to remind herself there were people around them, though it shouldn't have been necessary, considering how boisterous they were. Don't worry about them, Tucker said, depositing the champagne bottle back into the cooler with a clatter and crunch. What we talk about is none of their business, and vice versa. Let's just focus on getting to know each other. He lifted his glass, took a sip, let the bubbles pop in his mouth and tickle his throat. Effervescent. Evelyn watched him return the glass to the table with dampening eyes and quivering lip, bubbles spinning in the amber liquid in the untouched glass before her. So you're not a mean teacher, and you have no asshole students, and everyone you work with is lovely. Okay, I get it. They've conditioned you well. Turning a blind eye is second nature. That's okay. That can be fixed. You just have to open your eyes, see things for what they are. Identify the evil in people. Acknowledge it. Accept that it's there to be destroyed. And do you know the best way to do that? He crossed his arms, lifted an eyebrow, cocked his head. And no, she said, the first tear escaping an eye and running down a scratched, grime-covered cheek. I don't. Buck, you know, I think you got the wrong impression of me. I'm not a bad person. I treat people well. I don't. I'm not. The best way to do that. He cut her off, craning his head closer to hers. his nose almost touching the trembling candle flame, is to find it in yourself and expose it. Draw it out into the light, like a putrid, rotting vampire. Set it free and watch the havoc it wreaks. Once you know what your own darkness is capable of, you'll be able to recognize it in others. And then you'll be able to do something about it. Like me. It's simple, really. So come on, let's go on a journey of self-discovery. Aren't you drinking? Please, Buck. I don't think I'm what you're looking for. I think we should... Have you ever cheated on someone, Evelyn? Deliberately or accidentally, thinking it was okay because, it wasn't that serious and they weren't invested. No, I never. Have you ever lied to someone to let them down gently, or just because you wanted some attention, to be wined and dined, treated like a princess to pass the time? Buck, I want to stop, please. Have you ever hit anyone? A sibling? A child? Have you ever lost your cool and lashed out blindly with a hand or a foot? Hurt someone out of anger or desire? Please, so you don't use your authority to punish students. How about something else? Have you seduced one? All those virile young teenagers staring you up and down. Have you ever taken advantage of it? Tasted forbidden fruit? Or maybe not them. Maybe one of their parents. Maybe a bit of home-wrecking Satan's emerge. I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know what kind of person you think I am, but I'm not. Have you ever thought about killing someone, Evelyn? Pulling a cord tight around their neck and watching them choke, sticking a knife in their guts and twisting it, enjoying the warmth of the warm, sticky blood that... Jesus, God, somebody help me, please, somebody help me. She screamed, she stomped, she shook, she howled and yelled and roared. Teardrops flew from her eyes, but nobody helped. Oh, Evelyn, said Tucker, after allowing her a moment. I had a good feeling about you. I thought if I could get you to see the light and come around to my way of thinking, we'd have fun expelling assholes from the world. But it's not going to happen, is it? She continued to scream, wrenching and twisting in the chair she was tied to. So he shrugged and took hold of the candle, slid it from its holder, revealed the blade that protruded from its base. The teacher's eyes went wide, and her voice cracked as he angled it towards her throat, leaned further forward, and swiped left. A second mouth fell open in the smooth, pale skin of her throat, and she gasped, gurgled, thrashing more urgently as a spine-chilling groan crept from her soul. Tucker sat back and watched. No glee showed on his face. No excitement. He watched blankly. The knife held loose. The thin layer of blood on its blade, sprinkling scarlet splashes on the tablecloth. If there was an air about him at all, as his second hope for a partner fizzled out, it was one of disappointment. He really would have liked her as a soulmate. After a minute, when Evelyn stopped twitching, he checked to ensure his shirt and jacket hadn't been soiled, then slid the candle knife back into its holder, licked his forefinger, extinguished the candle's flame, pushed his chair back, and got up. He took a napkin from the table, dabbed at his mouth as he stepped back, watching his scuffed loafers, careful not to step into the blood that had pooled beneath the chair behind him. The blood that had oozed from boring, not mysterious Ashley. To his left, bound and gagged, Katerina lunged her upper body towards him, impressive arm muscles bulging through the gossamer thin material of the dress he'd clad her in, brown eyes glowering with hate, teeth gnashing behind the black rubber strap that subdued her mouth. The chair was bolted to the floor. Her feet were chained to the chair. Her movement was restricted. He wasn't ready for her yet. A fist to the face, she slumped, head lolling loosely over her chest, to the right of the teacher, in the center of a long, abandoned warehouse. Another dressed table, another pair of chairs, and terrified captive. A puddle of urine, not blood. On the floor around her feet, Tucker fished a lighter from his pocket as he stepped around the corpse of bleeding Evelyn, lit the wick of the candle dagger protruding from chrome scabbard. Lighter, back in pocket, he took hold of the rubber gag around the girl's head, pulled it off, relishing the snap as it came loose. "Please," she said, all wild, rabid eyes and mascara-smeared face. "Don't hurt me. I'll do anything. I promise. Anything." He drew a well-practiced smile onto his goatee-framed jaw and slid into the seat opposite his date, the blonde in the ivory-white dress, whose curls hung loose around her face, and whose name was displayed on a sticker. "Mandy," he announced, spreading his hands to greet her and bowing theatrically. "So good to see you. I was delighted to hear you wanted to meet me again. I believe you had some thoughts on escapable fate, the final petition of the beast. I trust that your patience and historically proven aptitude for distilling the truth of events from the muddled fog of contentious viewpoints will inhibit you from leaping to a firm and resolute condemnation of my actions until you hear me out to the full. Let us see if I cannot, in time, convince you of my benevolence by offering another perspective on the events which preceded my downfall, and which led me to assume this sorrowful state in which you now observe me. A perspective which, I hasten to warn you, runs contrary on many points to those you have, no doubt, already encountered. In exchange for your borrowed time, I promise to inform you of what really happened regarding a topic we can agree truly matters, the well-being of none other than my human host. The rumors you have heard are true. I am soldered by mechanisms far beyond the understanding of the human sciences, in an intimate manner, to the psychological tendencies of the human mind. I must again plead with you to discard your prescribed opinions regarding this arrangement of living. Any beast or person misunderstood will stand by me, and perhaps you also will join us in testifying that the misunderstood are always critiqued with unwarranted harshness. I have borne the most hideous names hurled at me by those who fear and misunderstand of my law. I have gone by many disparaging titles throughout history, and am only too aware of the multitude of unsavory images attached to the notion of a parasitic relationship. May I suggest as a substitute for this baseless hatred the fondness of a pet for its owner? After all, I do more than leech. Like your beloved animal companions, I am also capable of altering the mood of my host, as you shall soon see. My host was a young boy when I transferred myself from his parents' minds to his. His psychological foundations had been set years before, and I arrived to find a habitat much to my liking. Between the folds of his thoughts, I made myself a home. I had left a part of me behind, of course, in the minds of the parents. Their family had served me for generations, and it was a light task for one as skilled as I in the art of suggestion, and in possession of such intimate knowledge of their inner workings, to fan the mother's insecurities, just so that, while remaining completely imperceptible to their untrained eye, my little whispers achieved nothing short of the legal separation of the boy's parents. I then secured my spot in the boy's mind by magnifying his sense of responsibility for his parents' misery. Thenceforward, the slightest reminder that he was unlovable had him wriggling deliciously in my grasp. It was thus, with my claws sunk deep into his skull, that I ushered him into high school. His emotional trajectory was the most promising of all his dear family members. Yet, not a single friend he made the first month of school. The very weight of me crumpled his posture as he wandered, friendless, through the halls. I steered his mood between the scylla of an overly morose disposition, certain to be noticed by peers and trigger the arrival of help in the form of a school counselor or therapist, and the Charybdis of an optimism that would grant him the strength to shrug me off. I would have achieved this ideal flawlessly were it not for that damned girl who transferred to his school and was placed catastrophically in the seat across from my host. Were she my charge, I would have doubled down on her insecurities at the first sign of that cheerful, infectious laugh and blasphemously pristine, consistent mood. If not out of a sense of duty to myself, then out of respect for my colleagues, who work so hard to keep precisely her sort of energy away from the vicinity of our hosts. Before the week was out, the boy was going home, smiling to himself at the memory of their last conversation. Thankfully, I had conditioned him in preparation for such catastrophes. The reminder of the tension that awaited him at home when he stepped off the bus was enough to lull his mind back to its usual state of a miserable hibernation. Yet I knew this girl was no patch of sun or tasty treat. She was here to stay. It frightened me how deftly she slipped under my nose. After generations of thankless, uphill labor, I was faced with the prospect of relinquishing all in submission to her smile. The memory of the warm undertones that bubbled up from deep within the boy at the memory of her smile causes me still to shudder. I irked him. I belittled him. I downright scolded him in my best imitation of his father's voice for his cheek. You can imagine, then, my shock when he steeled his nerve and neglected to drink from the sweet stream of self-pity I offered him. He told me himself that this girl was worth the pain, a revelation that gave me a most unpleasant shock. For centuries, my strategy had been to capitalize on the self-pity of my hosts by maintaining their focus entirely and crushingly on themselves. The bitterness this tactic unfailingly produces kept his parents under my thumb until their separation. I expected the same trap would ensnare their child also, but my suggestions fell suddenly on deaf ears. He had a drive to know this girl, and his deep-set belief that he was essentially unloved and unlovable did nothing to curb his momentum. In all my carefully executed precautions, I had not foreseen his sexual drive would rear its head in this manner. I chastise myself for the mistake. Had I studied more carefully the behavioral patterns of his father, molded my contraptions to better accommodate the boy's hereditary quirks, I might have prevented this disaster from transferring. As it stands, the animal drive to reproduce is, like me, powerful and resilient, and cannot be permanently subdued, only temporarily diminished. He surprised even himself, I think, at his boldness and forwardness, looking back on what he did next. During a break in class came the briefest of silences, pregnant with the potential for shadow-shattering community. And then he spoke, and at that moment I perceived within myself a distinct and piercing horror that stemmed from the sudden realization that my source of life had suddenly begun to slip away, like sand. No, like water, between my sharpened claws. The boy and the girl talked on stools in the back of the classroom, opposite the wide windows, with the morning sun on their faces. His willingness to reveal his most intimate thoughts, including those I had pointedly enforced on him to be the cause of his unlovableness, to this girl, a near total stranger to him, unknown less than a week ago, it frightened me. So I bit him hard on the tip of his ear. It was too risky, you see, to allow a conversation of that nature to continue. They might have begun to discuss me, the boy's negative self-talk, and he might have let the cat out of the bag and deprived me of the strength that secrecy affords. He was still grimacing from the pinch of the memory of some past embarrassment when the teacher resumed class. But the girl looked worryingly at him, and I at her, for I knew the fight was far from won. Before I continue, I feel compelled to address my apparent neglect of the rules. You must understand, taking into account the urgency of my case, why it was necessary for me to inflict more than merely psychological torment on my host. Consider the goal I had to achieve. If the result of my admittedly brash action was the immediate embarrassment, the later regret, and the plummeted social confidence of my host, 3 dimensions firmly underneath my jurisdiction, can the rules really be said to have been abandoned? Even so, I trust you to keep the details of my misstep within the sphere of your knowledge, and mine only. That afternoon, the boy flopped onto bed, and I robotically conjured his usual evening diet of social comparison and self-loathing that bites so poignantly on the teenage psyche. I had just settled in for a mellow evening of brooding and isolation when the boy received a friend request from the girl. Soon they were volleying messages happily like 2 ducks in a pond. I spewed my most horrid concoction of degrading insults in his ear, but the boy took even my most clever and piercing threats and told them to her verbatim as I had whispered them to him. The stupid boy believed my work to be a product of his own imagination, but the untruth of his utterances was instantly checked by the girl, and the secret of my existence was out. I felt the shame and secrecy drain from his mind like the contents of a filthy toilet, all at once unclogged. You would have screamed too if you had been there, your life's work transformed in an instant to shining acceptance and relief. She urged him to speak with the school counselor on Monday, and walked him down to the counseling office herself when I attempted to undermine the urgency of his plight. I found us face to face with my old host, whose emotions I could not comprehend nearly as well from this side of his face. The counselor did not return my fiery gaze, although he noticed me the moment we stepped into his office, but gave the boy a long, sad look. I see what's happening here. Do I need antidepressants, sir? Asked my host. Oh no, just a daily dose of self-acceptance. If I have revealed too much of myself and my motivations, so that you look down upon me as the villain of this tale, believe me now when I tell you I have done so for a special purpose. For do I not also possess those same heroic traits of determination, bravery, creativity in my methods, and consistency in my effort, all in service to the biological imperative to survive and reproduce, for which you applaud and congratulate the boy. What does it matter, really, if my methods are unconventional, my form perhaps shocking to you, my feeding style abnormal? I would caution you against delivering judgments colored so heavily by dislike for the unfamiliar and the unknown. What is the difference between me, who seek to preserve my existence by any means, even the grossest, and him, who takes the opinion of his friend into account before making a decision to the same end and purpose? I assure you, it is a difference, not in type, but in degree only. He fought harder, more ruthlessly than I, and so he has won. I, who held the boy's leash, now cower, packed away and forgotten, in a dark and lonely corner of his mind. He does not visit or feed me, except occasionally, and by accident. My strength is waned, my spirit is dehydrated, my form considerably shrunken. With the addition of communal support, that loathsome girl had friends and introduced them to him. I doubt I shall ever drink from the boy's vitality again. What pains me most is the thought that his and her children will be reared without the guiding influence of my whispers on their young minds. I will be hard-pressed to imitate to his children the voice of their father when they have not been primed for years with the backdrop of his incessant complaints. The boy has abandoned me. I shiver, cold and alone. But you are still here, warm and receptive, believing in the truth of my whispers, attentive to my voice. You will let me in, won't you?